Hi, I'm Jeannie.
And I'm Danny. And we are Beauties and the Podcast.
Welcome back to Beauties and the Podcast. This week's episode is on Disney's 1940 film, Pinocchio. And now on to the movie breakdown.
So, Pinocchio starts with the song of When You Wish Upon a Star. The credits are still at the beginning of the film in the 1940s, and they are all carved on this wooden surface. There's a spotlight, and you see this Pinocchio book, and the spotlight moves up to Jiminy Cricket. Jiminy speaks about how wishes can come true, and he opens the book to a picture of a small village with a big bright star above it, and he starts telling the story of Pinocchio. In the beginning of producing this, Jiminy Cricket wasn't always the narrator. The deciding factor to make Jiminy the narrator came later on in the movie making process, and it shifted around in the story. So when that happened, so much new material evolved that they had to cut some things out, and they actually could have made 3 or 4 films out of all of the excess material that they didn't use.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, what happened? There I am. Gotta love touchscreens. Animators used a rotoscope technique for the production. So to perfect Jiminy's human-like movement, they brought in an actor named Val Stanton and recorded him moving around on a stage. And then after they recorded him, they used a technique called rotoscoping to trace over different frames from the clip of his movements, and that was the inspiration for Jiminy's animation. They partly did this because Walt would look at some of the designs and was like, listen, this is never going to work. That's crap.
Oh no, all their hard work.
Yep. So we see a homeless and very poorly dressed Jiminy Cricket. He's in the rain. So we see a homeless and very poorly dressed Jiminy Cricket. He's in the rain. He is looking for shelter, and he sees that the only lights on in any building is this wood shop that's ran by Christian Rubb, voiced and inspired Geppetto's entire look. So the animators weren't sure if they wanted the character to look like him, but once the actor signed on, they had decided to use him as like a live action model. Jiminy goes in via the window, and he sees this fire, and he's cold. He's been in the rain, so he warms himself by the fire.
And for me, when I was watching that, it reminded me of the story Cricket on the Hearth, and it basically is talking about how a cricket is a sign of good luck and health and good fortune, companionship, and often people have crickets by their fireplace as a fire decoration to bring luck into their homes. And I thought that was kind of a good foreshadowing for the rest of the movie, because Jiminy is going to be his conscience, he's going to be his good luck and all that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
There's Lucky Cricket Mulan too.
I know.
So Jiminy is looking around as he's warming his bum on a hot coal, and he sees all these clocks and music boxes and toys that are just great. Like, they're so greatly carved with so much detail. And then he sees this marionette puppet. So prop versions of the film's cuckoo clocks were actually crafted to get the actual look and feel of real clocks and other props, which this was another. Walt was like, listen, all this stuff isn't going to work. So they had to prove to him that this was going to work.
It's like one of my favorite scenes is the inside of Geppetto's house with all the clocks. Like, I adore the clocks. The vision, like, it's so beautiful, and the craftsmanship in it. That, if it was never in that movie, how sad that would be.
Yeah, so they were actually real cuckoo clocks that
That's awesome.
they made. So Geppetto comes down the stairs, and there's Figaro the kitten. He's got some paint in his hand. He's finishing painting the face of the marionette puppet. Figaro is Walt's favorite character, which I love.
He's
Figaro,
my favorite character.
He's one of my favorites.
He's so cute.
He loved him so much that he pushed for this kitten to appear in the film as much as possible. And once all this production was over, he had decided to make Figaro Minnie Mouse's companion, replacing her Cocker Spaniel.
Really?
Which I didn't know she had a Cocker Spaniel.
I did not know that as well. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. The lead animator behind Figaro based Figaro's appearance and personality of a spoiled kid, which, as you're watching the film, it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So even though he looks like an ordinary house cat, they infused his design with a child that gets his way. There's one scene that we will talk about where he's got dinner in front of him and he's just focused on the dinner, and Geppetto's like, listen, no, you're not going to eat right now, and he just kind of throws a silent little tantrum.
Yeah, he throws a lot of little tantrums throughout the whole movie.
He does.
Sure.
So back to the puppet. His face is getting painted on, and Geppetto says he's going to name him Pinocchio. And he asks Figaro and Cleo, which Cleo's the fish, if they like the name, and they're like, no. They shake their heads. It's a stupid name, which Pinocchio literally means little wooden head.
Which is what he calls him, my little wooden head.
Yep.
My little wooden boy, whatever. My little wooden head. Yeah.
So it took a while for the animators to get Pinocchio's look right. They struggled. They wanted to make him look adorable and childlike. So it took 12 artists and 18 months to nail the look that Walt had in mind. So now the song Little Wooden Boy plays as Geppetto is hitting all the switches on all the music boxes. They just so happen to make the same song. Geppetto takes Pinocchio by the strings and he's dancing with the marionette, makes him wave hi and say hi to Figaro and Cleo. And as this is happening, Jiminy is watching all of this and decides that he's going to rest his hand on the butt of one figurine and then looks and is like, oh, pardon me.
He's so cute.
There's so many of those that Jiminy does that are, it's just, I didn't catch it until I was like an adult.
I know,
watching
me neither.
the film, all the stuff that Jiminy does.
A couple times I was like, you little perv.
Yes. So we see the clock strike 9. All the clocks are going off, and some of the clocks are interesting. There's like birds there's ducks there's 2 ducks. One is flipping ahead as the other one is butts above water, and then they rotate. There's bees, there's birds with the little birdie babies. There's a turkey that's about to get his head cut off.
Oh my gosh, I know the gobbling sound that he makes.
Yep. The bird that's going to get shot with like a cork gun.
Yep.
And then my favorite was always the boy getting spanked.
Yes, mine too.
So it's bedtime. They all go to bed. Cleo has her little bed in her little fishy castle.
I know, so cute.
Jiminy goes to bed in like this little bowl type thing. Figaro has his little bed. Geppetto goes to bed, and then he's like, oh, I forgot to open the window. Mm-hmm. So Figaro's like, okay, I guess I'll get up and I'll open your window. And this is when Geppetto looks out the window and he sees the shooting star, and he wishes, starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might have the wish I wish tonight. And he wishes that Pinocchio would be a real boy. Why, like, an 80-year-old man would want a real boy at his age?
I think it's just a dream that he never had. He never had kids. He just really wanted to have a child, and that was still a dream to him. And he knew that he probably could never get married or have a wife or have someone give him a child, like birth him a child. So to him, something he created is the closest thing it's going to be.
And then we see Jiminy can't sleep because we all know this. When you sleep, everything is so much louder in the dark.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. He reminds me so much of me when I'm sleeping, like the littlest ticking noises and all that little snoring or whatever, and he just loses it.
Mm-hmm. So he hears all the clocks moving, Cleo's bubbles, and then Geppetto's snoring, which is outrageous. And all of a sudden he just yells quiet, and it's quiet. So then we see this bright light from the star approaching the window. The star comes into the window, and the blue fairy appears into the tiny bedroom, and she awakens Pinocchio, and he realizes that he can move, he can talk, and he can walk. So at the time, she was not yet a Broadway dance legend, but Marge Champion, who was married to one of the animators, was the physical model for the Blue Fairy.
Cool.
So she also had to act out physical movements on the film as well. The voice of the fairy was provided by Evelyn Venable, and she was known for her roles back in the 1940s for Death Takes a Holiday and The Little Colonel, which she played alongside Shirley Temple, and she was also the model for the initial Columbia Pictures logo of the lady holding a torch.
Wow. Yeah, I would say that Blue Fairy is very classic looking, like very 20s, like beautiful classic.
Mm-hmm. So Cliff Edwards is apparently also known as Ukulele Ike. I've never heard of this man. I'm sure Dad has.
Oh, I'm sure Dad has.
So he was very popular. He was a popular novelty tune singer in the 20s and 30s. He auditioned for the voice of Pinocchio, but he was 43 years old, and they said that you sound too much like you have an adult voice, and we don't need an adult voice. So he was cast as Jiminy Cricket. And at that time, Dickie Jones, who Dad does know of him, he was a 12-year-old at this time, and he appeared in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He landed the role of Pinocchio.
Oh, I love Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I never made that connection.
I've never seen it.
It's a good movie. You'd like it.
He also voiced a boy named Alexander, who is one of the boys on Pleasure Island.
Oh, cool.
I don't know which one is Alexander. So the Blue Fairy says, to be a real boy, Pinocchio must be brave, truthful, and unselfish, and he must choose right from wrong. Jiminy, hearing all of this, kind of butts in and was like, I could be your conscience. And he tries to get, a new gold badge. The Blue Fairy gives him a brand new outfit, new umbrella, new shoes, new everything. And she says that, well, your badge will have to wait. So the Blue Fairy leaves, and Jiminy tries to tell him how to decide. Give a little whistle plays, and Jiminy is trying to teach him through the song that if he needs help, you need to learn how to whistle, because Pinocchio doesn't know how to whistle yet. This is where another Jiminy's following this little maiden.
And a little perv moment.
Yep. He sees this maiden, and he's got eyes for her.
Like, woo, woo.
Tries to follow her, and then the door closes right in front of his face. Pinocchio is walking at the end of the song, and he gets his feet stuck in some buckets, and he falls and wakes everybody up. Geppetto, looking for an intruder, gets a gun from under his pillow, and Figaro is walking directly under him. How Geppetto didn't trip with Figaro, I don't know. Or step on him. So Pinocchio's like, here I am. Geppetto shoots the ceiling, and Geppetto sees that Pinocchio is real. And he's so happy. He's like, you're real. So he turns on all the music players again and plays music, and they dance. Jiminy's dancing with this lady on one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then gets crushed by her man when he gets back.
Yep.
On one of these music players. Pinocchio sees the candle and is like, ooh, what is this? Goes to touch it. He's wood, so his finger catches on fire. Geppetto sees this because Pinocchio's like, look! And Geppetto picks him up and can't find anything to extinguish his finger in, so he throws his finger into Cleo's bowl, smokes poor Cleo out. In this scene, there's a hidden Mickey in one of the chairs that they pass.
Yes, I saw that. That was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw that as a child,
Nope.
but I saw it when I rewatched it this time looking for Mickey's.
Yeah.
I would have never noticed it before.
It's bedtime again. Everybody goes to bed. And then it just flips to morning. Geppetto sends Pinocchio to school. Pinocchio has been technically alive for
I have
8 hours?
So many issues with this.
9 hours?
So many issues with this scene. Like,
And he gives him an apple, and Figaro gives him a book, and they're like, here,
go to school.
go to school. How? He didn't know that fire could catch his finger on fire and he could burn.
Uh-huh.
Like, he doesn't know any. He's a puppet. And he's just expecting him to
Find school.
Find school. Figure out where school is and go to school.
Find school. Not to mention, you didn't enroll your kid in the school.
He's not registered.
They're not waiting for him. They don't know who he is. And can you imagine the uproar of a boy Pinocchio?
So, as Pinocchio is going to school, we see Honest John and Gideon walking, which is the fox and the walking cat.
Which, sidetrack, just hit me when I watched it this last time. They're like the only two characters that are animals that speak.
Yes and no. Gideon doesn't speak.
I know, but you know what I'm saying? They're like more human-like.
Yeah, they're the only animals that walk around on their hind feet with clothes
where
on.
like Figaro and Chloe, like they don't.
Yeah.
It just was interesting to me. I noticed this time that they were like most of the rest of the characters are humans.
Yep.
And then there's just a fox and a cat who are dressed like humans, walking like humans, and I thought that was unusual, and I'm wondering why they chose to do that, but sorry.
Yeah. I noticed that when I was a kid, and it always kind of bothered me a little bit that they were
I never
not
noticed
people.
before.
Oh, I did. So, Honest John and Gideon, they're walking around. They see a poster for Stromboli, who is kind of in charge of like a town-to-town marionette show.
Mm-hmm.
Honest John and Gideon are talking about how they swindled him the last time he was in town by fooling him or trying to fool him into thinking that Gideon was a marionette.
Yes.
And he's very much not a marionette.
No.
So Honest John's sidekick, which is Gideon, he's a cat. He was originally supposed to be a speaking character. He was supposed to be voiced by Mel Blanc, who is the voice of Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and some of the other Looney Tunes characters. And he was also supposed to be the one that I believe was going to voice Dopey.
Oh, okay.
I believe that was him that we talked about in the last episode.
Yes, I think so too.
But the filmmakers decided to make Gideon a mute just like Dopey in Snow White. And so all of Mel's voice work that he had already done for Gideon was just cut out of the film.
Wow.
Except for where he hiccups later on.
At the Red Lobster.
However, he voiced Figaro where he sneezes in this film. So they saved one little tidbit.
A hiccup and a sneeze.
Yep.
All that work.
And according to the Times, the character actor of Walter Catlett, who voiced Honest John, who's a theatrical con artist, he based his characterization on two famous acting brothers. We don't know who they are. We just know that their last name starts with a B, so it's presumably John and Lionel Barrymore. So, Honest John and Gideon, they see Pinocchio, and they're like, that's a talking puppet. Like, that's a little wooden boy. So, they turn around and they follow him and they get his attention, and they're trying to sell him on the easy road to success, which is the theater.
Sly fox, you sly fox, you.
And Pinocchio's like, that sounds great. I know nothing.
I don't even know what the school is that my, I guess, dad person thing that I just showed up in his house one night told me I should go to. But your thing sounds so much more fun.
Yeah. So then Hi Diddle Dee Dee plays, which is one of my favorite songs.
Oh, I do like that song. I like a lot of the music in this movie.
Yes. This is by far one of my favorite Disney songs. And next thing you know, they're on their way to see Stromboli. As they head the opposite way of school, Jiminy is running very late. And he's like, well, what a great conscience I am. I'm late, first day on the job. And he passes Pinocchio thinking that this is like a parade. So he sees Pinocchio, Honest John, and Gideon walking the opposite way of school. And he's like, what? Where are you going? So he chases them. He gets a hold of Pinocchio. And he tries to remind Pinocchio of temptation by saying, this is what temptation looks like. Now in Pinocchio's head, he's like,
what's temptation?
What? So he is temptation? Like, temptation's a person? Well, a cat and a fox? Like, that's
not
temptation?
their name.
Yeah. So Jiminy is like, listen, you're going to say no. You're going to say, I need to go to school. And then you're going to go to school. And Pinocchio's like, that sounds like a plan.
You're like, okay.
And then Honest John is like, okay, well, let's go to the theater. And Pinocchio's like, okay.
Which is so obnoxious to me, but also so realistic, because children are like that all the time, where you're like explaining something to them, and then you're like, okay, do you understand? Okay. And then they go do the opposite of what you said, or do the thing you told them not to do. And you're like, you didn't understand a word I said. So it's very fitting for Pinocchio to be so naive and so childlike.
Yes.
It's very fitting.
Especially since by now he's only, what, like
a few hours old?
Yeah. So this is where there was a song in the original production that kind of got cut out from the final film, and it's called Straight Ahead. And the Blue Fairy sings it. And it's this is where the Blue Fairy had more of a part in the film than Jiminy did. And then they decided to kind of flop that and give Jiminy a more, like, a bigger part into the story. So the Blue Fairy song called Straight Ahead, it kind of warns him that the easy way is normally misleading. Don't follow the easy way, and smart choices go straight ahead. And so in this version of the production, Pinocchio took those words of wisdom literally.
Yep, and went straight ahead.
Yes.
To theater.
But he also went to school. And then it was even used ironically when they're on Pleasure Island.
Okay.
And they're going straight ahead to Pleasure Island. So by this point, Pinocchio's like, okay, I'm going to go to the theater, even though I'm supposed to be going to school and Jiminy told me to go to school. I'm still going to the theater. And Jiminy's like, I'm going to go after you. So at the theater, Stromboli's introducing Pinocchio to the audience.
Sorry to cut you off, but when I watched it, I felt like there was a scene missing. I don't know why I felt like there was a scene missing between them going to the theater and then his performance, like, right away. I thought there was something in between. I don't know why I thought that. But when I rewatched it, I was like, that's really a cut. Like, it goes from, we're going to go see this person day, night.
Yeah, it's
like a dramatic cut.
Big time. Like, there's a big chunk of time that we don't know what happened from the time Pinocchio said, let's go, to the theater, to the time he's on stage. We don't know. We don't see him meeting Stromboli. We don't see how he got on stage. We don't see Honest John, Gideon, and Stromboli even talking about Pinocchio.
How he learned the performance in 2.2 seconds. I know. It stood out to me when I watched it this time.
So I Got No Strings plays. At first take, he goes down the stairs and he falls on his face. His nose ends up in this hole in the floorboard. Everybody's laughing at him, and Stromboli is angry. So furious.
He's swearing in some language.
Yeah.
Possibly Italian. That's what I figured, but it's so jumbled, like mumbled in certain areas. I was like, wow.
So Pinocchio gets up and he starts again. He's all good. He's bragging about how he has no strings and he can move all on his own. And then we see all these other female Russian marionettes that are kind of flirtatious with Pinocchio. Pinocchio has no clue what they're even saying.
No. And then there's the Dutch dancers and the French dancers and then the Russian men.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that scene.
So Jiminy's watching him, and all of a sudden he sees the female marionettes come down, and then Jiminy's like, let's get my theater glasses. I need a close-up of these girls.
Hello, perv.
Everybody's throwing, at the end of the performance, everybody's throwing money on the stage, and Jiminy's like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he can be a success. He's only like 12 hours old at this point.
And made out of wood.
He hasn't gone to school, which means he didn't do the right thing. But yeah, he's a success. Maybe I was wrong.
Which is a good lesson, because sometimes when we're faced with two different decisions and we see a difficult one and an easy one, and we take the easy one and it seems to turn out okay in the moment, and you're like, well, okay, I did the right thing, and then disaster follows.
Yes.
It's a very good example of that.
Yes. So now it's raining. We're back at the cottage. Geppetto doesn't know where Pinocchio is. He's very worried, very distraught. There's this huge dinner with fish, melted butter, an assortment of other food.
Looks delicious. Oh, and she has a little cake.
Yep. Cleo's got her little cake.
But it doesn't get soggy or wet in her fishbowl. It's magic.
Yep, don't know how that happens. So Geppetto puts on his coat and he goes out and he's like, no one's going to eat until Pinocchio comes home. And Figaro is like, I see this big fat fish in front of me. I'm going to eat it because I'm starving. And
like that spoiled toddler you talked about earlier.
Yep. Cleo blows her bubbles in her fish tank. And
she's a rule follower.
Oh, yeah, Cal.
Me.
So Figaro kind of looks at her and she shakes her head. And then he just sits there and he pouts in his chair because he can't eat.
I know. It's the cutest. It's so, like, it's awesome to see his personality in those little moments like that. Awesome. Which, if Disney loved him that much.
Oh, yeah.
That's why. But super cool.
So from there, we are in this wagon. Stromboli is counting all the money that he just made from Pinocchio's performance. He gets this weird, what looks like a washer to us nowadays, but is like an old currency. And he's like, what is this? He bends it and he's like, here, take this. This is your cut, Pinocchio.
He gets mad. He's like, oh, da-da-da. And he's like, oh, here you go.
This is yours. Like, it's not worth crap to me,
And
but
he doesn't know anything, Pinocchio, so.
yeah. So Pinocchio is so excited. He's a success. Stromboli has told him he's a success, and he's like, I'm going home to tell my father. And he's like, what? No. And Pinocchio gets up, and Stromboli picks him up and throws him into the birdcage. Which, it's a birdcage. How does a marionette that's roughly the size of a 5-year-old fit into a birdcage?
But he doesn't seem that tall, like, in comparison to a child. Like, I don't know. I would have to rewatch to look at sizing. But if realistically, if that's what he is, yes.
But even when they zoom out of the birdcage, you can see the door, and the door is so much smaller than Pinocchio.
Mhm.
How the heck did Pinocchio fit into the birdcage?
Oh, yeah, like even get him in there? I see what you're saying. Yeah.
How did he get through the door?
Magic.
So he throws him into the birdcage, and Stromboli threatens him, and then leaves after he yells at him, and the wagon or carriage starts to take off. So Stromboli has started leaving for the next town, an event that he's due for. Jiminy sees the wagon. He was originally going to head in the opposite direction. Is like, I'm going to wish him good luck. Like, I'm going to send him off. I'm a good little cricket, I guess. So he hops into the wagon, and he sees that Pinocchio is locked into the cage, terrified, and he asks him what happened, and Pinocchio's like, oh, well, he threw me in here. So Jiminy hops into the lock, which I don't think a cricket can really go into a lock, but
Seems like he's done it a lot. He's like, takes off his coat, hangs it. He's like, I should be able to get this.
And he even says when he can't get it and it's too rusty, he even says, oh, it must be one of the older models. Like, he has done this so many times.
So what we're learning about Jiminy Cricket, perv, possibly a robber, or breaks into people's houses. Well, I mean, he did break into Pinocchio's house. He did. He crept under the door. But nice conscience there, Mr. Jiminy Cricket.
So he's trying to figure out this lock situation. It's raining, and we see Geppetto walking, and we see the carriage ironically passing by Geppetto. I never caught that.
I know, I didn't either. I did the same thing, and then as soon as Geppetto screams out, Pinocchio, it's a crash of lightning, so he can't even hear him, and they're like not even a couple feet from each other. I was like, oh my gosh, I never noticed that before.
Yeah, I haven't either. So we're back inside the carriage, and Jiminy's crying, Pinocchio's crying, and all of a sudden we see the blue fairy. And she asks Pinocchio, she's like, well, why didn't you go to school?
I still don't know what school is.
Well, I was on my way to school, and two big monsters with big green eyes, they tied me in a big sack, and they put Jiminy in a little sack. And as he's saying this, his nose is growing. And she asks, well, did you escape? No, I was chopped up into firewood. So you're chopped up into firewood as I'm talking to you. That makes so much sense. So right now his nose is huge. It's so long. And she gives him another chance. She's like, are you telling me the truth? Yeah, I'm telling you the truth. And all of a sudden his nose has a bird's nest at the end. And she, as his nose has grown with each lie, and he's still lying, he wants to know what happened to his nose. And that's when she says, a lie keeps growing and growing until it's as plain as the nose on your face.
Yes. And truthfully, there is such a thing called the Pinocchio effect, where when you tell a lie, the temperature around your nose and the orbital muscles and all that around your nose and eyes actually gets bigger, hotter, that kind of thing. And they figured this out because they used thermographic cameras, these psychiatrists in University of Spain. So that's pretty cool. That it's actually like a thing. When you lie, your nose gets hot. It might not grow, but it's getting hot.
Yeah.
That was interesting to me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So she helps them, and as she's helping them, she says, a boy who won't be good might just as well be made of wood. So she helps them, she opens the cage up, she disappears, and they escape, which they leave. And Jiminy, it's okay for him to yell because he's so little, and he's like, bye guys, and then Pinocchio screams at the top of his lungs, bye!
Yeah.
And Pinocchio's like, listen, you gotta keep quiet. Shh. So they escape, and then we are all of a sudden at what's called the Red Lobster Inn, which I love the name of. And we see Honest John and Gideon, and they're talking about how they swindled Stromboli again.
There's the hiccup. It's going to be right there.
Yep. And then we meet this new character. He's a coachman. Don't really have another name except for the coachman. And he has a proposal. And now with this proposal, we don't hear exactly what the proposal is because he's whispering it to Honest John. Gideon, this is where he's hiccuping because he's drinking an awful lot. So they don't want to talk to Gideon. And you can see that in their facial expressions. Like, we have to whisper it to each other because Gideon's going to overhear.
He's not trustworthy. I think it's, like, who's he going to tell? He doesn't speak. But I think they just don't trust him. I don't know.
So all we hear out of this secret as Gideon is trying to hear through Honest John's ears.
Yep, I loved that.
Is it's going to involve real money, stupid disobedient boys that play hooky from school. We hear Pleasure Island, and we get the notion from Honest John that that's illegal. Like, anything to do with Pleasure Island is illegal. We don't know what Pleasure Island is yet. And then the coachman says, well, they'll never come back as boys.
Dun, dun, dun.
So we're back outside. Pinocchio and Jiminy are racing for home. And Honest John and Gideon see Pinocchio and stop him again. Pinocchio tells them that he didn't like Stromboli. Stromboli was terrible. He was mean. And Honest John performs a medical check on Pinocchio, which this is probably one of my favorite scenes.
It's so ridiculous.
In the entire thing. He's like, there's a slight touch of monetary complications with bucolic, semilunar contraptions of the flying trapezes. He checks his tongue. It says, say hippopotamus. And as he's checking his tongue, he's holding Pinocchio's tongue, so all of a sudden you hear, ha-ha-ha. He's like, I knew it. To compound transmission of the pandemonium with percussion and spasmodic, frantic disintegration. It's like, close your eyes. What do you see? Well, nothing. It's like, open them. And as he's opening them, he's got this cloth that's white with red polka dots. He's like, well, what do you see? Spots. He's like, aha.
And all the while, like, the cat is like scribing for him, and all he's doing is like drawing scribbles because he's illiterate.
So then he listens to his heart with whatever he's pretending to listen to his heart, and he's beating on like a nearby window shutter with his cane. He's like, oh my goodness, a palpitating syncopation of the killer diller with a wicky-wacky stamping of the boy joy.
Oh
Quick,
gosh.
doctor, that report, which was the report that Gideon was scribing. And he looks at it, and it's just scribbles. And he's like, that makes it perfectly clear. My boy, you're allergic.
So funny.
And of course, yes, there must be only one cure for allergic. A vacation on Pleasure Island, the happy land of carefree boys where every day is a holiday. And he's like, here's your ticket. And he hands him the Ace of Spades, which the Ace of Spades is the death card when dealing with like psychics and fortune tellers. That's the death card.
Whoa, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
So they send him off to Pleasure Island, and Jiminy sees Pinocchio running off again. And he's like, seriously, what is with this kid? Like, you never learn. What did Honest John and Gideon just do to you just this morning?
That's why I wish I had seen that scene in between to see how it how the transfer happened, because it seems Pinocchio still trusts them. He's just like, no, I didn't like him very much. He has no like harsh feelings towards him, and that's either because one, he's dumb and naive, or two, they made it in a way where it wasn't like, oh, here, Pinocchio, thanks, money, and make it obvious that they were selling him or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, oh, I wish I could see that transaction happen.
So all of a sudden it breaks away, and we see a wagon full of boys. Pinocchio's in the front. We see the coachman guiding this wagon next to the coachman.
Like a Santa Claus without a beard. Like, he's big and fat and kind of like got his red.
And I believe
face.
he's wearing red.
He's wearing a red coat. I want to see he has a red nose.
Yes.
And like a black, or maybe like a Frosty the Snowman, but in human form. I don't know. He's got a black top hat.
Yeah.
He gives me Christmas vibes.
So Pinocchio's in the front seat. He's holding his Ace of Spades, which in his head, because he doesn't know any better, is a ticket to Pleasure Island. Like, that's good as gold. And we meet Lampwick, or Lampy.
I love Lampwick.
Which I still,
bizarre character.
Even watching this as a kid to watching it as an adult, I still couldn't figure out his name. Like, I had to look up his name because I couldn't understand what they were saying.
Well, for the longest time, I thought Gideon was Kitty because they called him Giddy.
Yes.
And I thought they were saying kitty, and I was like, it's a cat. Okay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was older that I figured out that it was Gideon, and it was Giddy. And I'm like,
well, then even,
wow.
Yeah, and even in all my notes on this, I wrote Kitty because I thought that's what his name was. And I'm like, Kitty and Honest John. Why does the fox have a name, but Kitty is Kitty? And then going and researching a lot of stuff, I'm like, his name's Gideon?
Well, I figured it out when I took that test of how much do you remember from Pinocchio before I rewatched Pinocchio. And that's why I got, like, the whatever 97%, which I don't know if I still have that to post on Facebook. But it was interesting. I was like... His name is what?
Gideon.
So Lampwick. Oh.
Yep. We meet Lampwick. And he's all excited about going to Pleasure Island. Pinocchio keeps trying to show him this card, and he's not having it.
He's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because he's not dumb.
Yeah. So there's a song that was cut from the film that plays when we see them traveling to Pleasure Island. It was called 3 Cheers for Anything. And it was all about Pleasure Island and the bad things about, like, swiping a pie or telling a lie and just doing all sorts of bad things. So then we see them go from this wagon and carriage to a ship, because you have to travel on a ship to get to Pleasure Island.
Right.
Pleasure Island originally had a different name. So it was once known as Boogie Land, Silly Land, and there's a lot of thought processes going into what is this place going to be called. It is not what the book originally had it. We'll get into that later. And they needed something because they needed to shed some light on some of the darker themes that are on Pleasure Island.
There's a lot of drinking and smoking in this movie that I never noticed.
Oh yeah,
either.
Oh, I knew that.
But as a kid, like I saw them doing it, but it didn't. I wasn't like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe they're doing it. Like it wasn't something that as a kid stood out. But as a adult watching it, I'm like, whoa, there's like a lot of drinking going on and smoking in this. And like the reference, like when they're on the island and there's like all the tobacco references.
Yes.
That was pretty cool.
So they needed something that's like, well, for every action, there's a penalty. There's something going to happen to you if you do something wrong. So eventually they got to Pleasure Island. So when they get to Pleasure Island, it looks like a huge carnival. Mm-hmm. There's announcers. There's we see a Ferris wheel. We see amusement park rides. And the announcer, when they get there, it's like, right here, boys. Get it here. Get your cake, pie, dill pickles, and ice cream. Eat all you can. Be a glutton. Stuff yourselves. It's all free, boys. It's all free. Hurry, hurry, hurry. So we know it's all for boys. There are no girls, probably because,
girls are good.
Girls are awesome. So there's a house to roughhousen. There's...
Oh my gosh, I love that. Where it's like, come on in. Yep. And it's the guy at the... Oh my gosh, so funny.
There's Tobacco Row, and they're like, get your cigars, your cigarettes, and chewing tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Oh yeah, my favorite.
There's the model home.
That you can destroy.
Yep, it's open for all destruction. Brand new model home. It's all yours. So we see all the boys just having fun, doing what boys do.
Getting
all the
into
destructive.
Trouble.
Yep, they're destructive, getting into trouble, stuff that they can do there that they would get in trouble if they were anywhere else.
Oh my gosh, totally. And here's my question. How often are boys brought there? Who's cleaning up all this?
Right.
And how often do they need to, is this a nightly thing that they have to the next day build everything over again?
Restock everything.
Right.
Yes.
I was wondering that this time too. I'm like, who is cleaning up after these boys?
Yes. And all of a sudden, we see that similar to when time kind of jumped for us when we missed what happened when John and Gideon were trading Pinocchio to Stromboli. All of a sudden, we see that things have calmed down. So we don't know if everybody did what they were going to, and now all of a sudden they just kind of got tired.
Right.
We don't know. All of a sudden, we just see things that they're calmer.
So it could even be week or the time period. I never thought of that.
Yeah, we don't know.
That makes a difference with Geppetto on the opposite end of that, like how long he was searching for Pinocchio.
Which we will get into that in a second.
So cool.
So we just see things have calmed down. Jiminy is all of a sudden on the island looking for Pinocchio. We see Pinocchio in the pool hall with Lampy, and they're smoking cigars, and it's only the two of them. Mm-hmm. We don't see any other boys. Jiminy finds them, and he's yelling at Lampy for all the poor choices that they have made. Pinocchio all of a sudden's like, listen, you need to stop yelling at Lampy. Lampy is my best friend. And Jiminy's like, your best friend? He's your best friend. I've been trying to do right by you. You haven't listened, but yet this dude that you just met is your best friend. So Lampy is making fun of Jiminy. There's a little thing where, Jiminy falls down the pool table hole, and they're laughing at him. Just kind of mean.
How did he not get squished by one of those?
Oh, by a ball?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounded painful.
Mm-hmm.
So Jiminy gets his coat put back on, very backwards. He just leaves. He's so mad. He's like, you're on your own. I'm out.
Nice knowing you.
Yep. So as Jiminy's trying to get off the island, he hears a commotion as he's trying to get the door open. He kind of crawls under it, and he sees all these donkeys. He's like, where did all these donkeys come from? And you can tell that the coachman is grabbing the donkeys, stripping them of clothes, like they all have clothes on, and he's talking to them, and all of a sudden one's like, I want to go home, and he's talking, and the coachman throws him back. He's like, this one's not changed yet, send him back. And that's when it hit Jiminy that all these donkeys that are in crates that say to be sold to the circus and salt mines, those are all the kids.
Yep. And all that, like, helpers that the guy's yelling at are, like, big black blobs. They just look like kind of like an outline of a black gorilla.
Yes.
Or something.
They remind me of the grave digger in Mickey's Christmas Carol. There's a grave digger in Mickey's Christmas Carol.
It's Bruno.
Which turns out to be Bruno. It's his silhouette that we see. Yes. But that's what they reminded me of.
So, do you think transform are actually going to fully transform, or do you think they're stuck like that, where they're like half donkey, half boy? That's what I always thought, because I always, when he was like, not this one, and throws him, and there's like a group of them, I'm like, well, what are they going to do with those ones? They're not donkeys. Are they going to...
I'm assuming if they just gave him more of whatever transformed them, they might fully transform.
Like more food or whatever from Pleasure Island.
So Jiminy is like, I need to warn Pinocchio. I need to at least try, because Jiminy's, he's a good cricket. He's a good conscience. He's got to try at least one more time to help Pinocchio out. So we're back at the pool hall, and Lampy pours a beer. Pinocchio gets a beer. They're playing pool, and all
children
of a sudden,
drinking beer.
Yep.
Not weird at all.
Not at all. They're on Pleasure Island. That's why they're there.
Smoking, drinking, gambling. You know.
Yep.
Whatever. Like, how old is he? Like, I don't know.
Couldn't even tell you.
Not even close to being 10.
No.
That's what they do all the time.
Yep. So all of a sudden, we see Lampy turning into a donkey. Fully transforming. Ears, nose, like it starts with the nose, it starts with the laugh, it starts, ears, he gets a tail, he gets the feet, and we see him turn into a full donkey.
And so does Pinocchio.
Pinocchio gets ears and a tail, throws out his beer, because everything was fine until they had beer.
Yeah, he throws out his beer as he's watching Lampy turn, and he thinks it's just like, I've had too much, like I'm starting to see things. He doesn't realize that this is really happening.
Yeah, and Lampy is just running around because he's panicking at this point, kicking, screaming, can't understand what he's saying now. Yep, he is a full donkey. And Jiminy comes back, he sees that, he's got some ears, a tail, and he's laughing like a donkey. And Jiminy helps him. So they run up this mountain, they dive into the water, which is the only way to get off the island, and they somehow swim all the way back to the mainland. Back on land, they head home. They go to the cottage. There's no lights. It is so dark. Figaro's gone, Cleo's gone, and there are cobwebs all over, and there are no wooden objects. It's completely vacated. Which, again, could be the time lapse that we don't know what happened.
That makes so much sense. So much sense. So, because when we were talking about this before, I think even we watched the movie, was how it bothered us, like, as children, to see Pinocchio leave and to us not feel like that he had been gone for a long time and then come back to a house that has cobwebs and dust, and why would Geppetto take the cat and the fish, and that's ridiculous. But if we think about that, where there's probably been a longer time period with at the carnival at Pleasure Island, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, there's a good chunk of time that we don't know what that chunk of time is. So they're back at the cottage. They sit outside. They have no clue what to do now because nobody's home. And all of a sudden we see this white bird drop a message off in front of Jiminy, and he reads it, and it's about Geppetto, and it says that he was swallowed by a whale named Monstro, and that he's alive inside the whale at the bottom of the sea. So
that's normal.
Makes perfect sense, you know.
So don't worry, he just got new property. It's just ocean view. Sorry.
How the taxes are. So
he's got a landlord named Monstro.
Yep.
Nice.
So they take it upon themselves to go to the sea and find Monstro, which they're in their head is just like, let's go to the sea, let's find Monstro, let's somehow get eaten by a whale. Okay.
Yep. And how he gets there is my favorite.
Oh my goodness. So they attach a rock to Pinocchio's tail.
Because that won't hurt.
Nope. And they dive into the sea. When they get to the bottom of the sea, Jiminy takes a rock, puts it in his hat, flips right side up, and that he's like, oh, I put it in the wrong end.
I know, that is so funny.
And while he's doing this, there's fish that are looking at him. Like this little goldfish is just watching
him. You look like bait.
And so all of a sudden he takes this rock and he puts it into his pants.
I know, it's so funny.
And he asks the fish for privacy.
Because it was being nosy.
So as I'm watching this, even Cal asked this question. Jiminy's a cricket. You're in the bottom of the sea. I can understand Pinocchio. Pinocchio's a little wooden boy. Like, he's wood. He doesn't need to breathe.
How can he breathe? Yep.
But Jiminy's a cricket. So how can he breathe and talk with no problem in the bottom of the sea?
That was my issue as a kid. And I didn't care, like, for me, Pinocchio was a real boy, even though I knew he wasn't. And I was like, how can they breathe under the ocean? Because I would have loved to have been able to just walk in the ocean and be able to breathe like that. That's so cool.
Yep. So, regardless, Jiminy's talking. They are wandering around. They're both calling for Father and Geppetto. And
I love how they did it with the water and the bubbles and like the voice change. Oh, it's so good.
And fish are starting to come around. Other sea creatures are coming around. And as either one asks if they've seen Monstro, all the sea creatures flee because they're petrified of Monstro. So they eventually get to Monstro at the bottom of the sea, and he's sleeping. Thurl Ravenscroft is the voice of Monstro, which Monstro doesn't really have a voice. He grunts a lot. So Thurl Ravenscroft is also known as, additionally, he and his group, which he had a singing group, the Mellow Men, they were in charge of recording the Honest John song that was cut out. So we see Geppetto and Figaro. They're inside Monstro, and they are both fishing inside Monstro from a wrecked boat.
Love it. Makes so much sense.
Yep. Figaro's got a little line on the end of his tail.
That is really stinking cute, though, but not realistic.
And so Geppetto is worried that they're going to be starving. He's worried about starving to death, and he says that it's been a while since Monstro has anything to eat. And apparently we gather the way they do things is when Monstro catches fish, they catch the fish that go into Monstro, and that's what they eat.
Yes.
So you're telling me that they're making poor Cleo eat fish?
Yep.
Poor
No,
Cleo.
she could probably get seaweed. She could eat.
Oh, that is true.
Or something like bugs or something, like bug creatures. I don't know. Like, what? You know how there's like water bugs or something? I don't know. She's a vegetarian. She has seaweed. That's what I'm going to say.
So, originally, things got dark. Originally. As if they couldn't already get more dark than what they already have. They got more dark originally. And Geppetto and Figaro thought about eating Cleo.
Oh, no. It seems like they've been there a while. They have like a good system. Like they have
Yeah.
It looks like they've been there a while.
Yeah.
But how are they not being digested by Monstro?
Yep.
Not a clue.
So ultimately, Walt Disney decided that we don't need to starve them long enough to eat their pet.
No, that would be terrifying for a child.
Yes. So Geppetto talks about how upset he is about Pinocchio. He was such a good boy, which how the heck does he know? He had Pinocchio living. Pinocchio was only living for a matter of hours before Geppetto sent him out into the real world, and Pinocchio never came home.
And in the meantime, he caught his hand on fire and ran away from home. Good boy.
Yeah.
Good boy.
And essentially, he's never done right. He has only done wrong. He's never listened to Jiminy, who he's supposed to be listening to. That was clear that he's supposed to be listening to Jiminy.
I mean, Geppetto doesn't know any of this, obviously, but he is nowhere near being a good boy.
No. Mm-hmm. And Geppetto just thinks, oh, he was a good boy. How the heck do you know? The majority of the time you had him, he was sleeping.
When Pat and I watched this, his comment was, do you see how red Geppetto's nose is? I think he's an alcoholic. He kept saying
he probably is.
He said how he walks, how he's like just so, oh, look at you, my little, like so touchy and lovey. Like he's like, he looks, and all of the clocks have like drinking themes in it. His wristwatch has the beers on it. Yes. He goes, I think he's an alcoholic. I'm like, that's a good theory.
So all of a sudden, Monstro wakes up and starts eating. As he's starting to eat, Geppetto is like, oh, I can go fishing. So Geppetto is catching fish left and right. Figaro is slapping the fish into the trough to make sure that, they keep the fish.
So cute. I love that cat so much.
A big help. And all of a sudden,
around. He's like, snap.
Yep. And then Pinocchio sees Monstro. He tries to swim for it, which the main goal was to get into Monstro to find his father, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, that's Monstro, let's run away or swim away.
Like what you had no plan.
Yeah,
you went in this like everything else, so naive.
Yes. So Pinocchio ends up getting swallowed in the air. Like he ended up way above the water. Monstro rose up, ate him, collapsed back into the water.
So, meanwhile, he had a rock still tied to his tail, so how did he get all the way up in the air?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
So, Pinocchio is one of the quote-unquote fish things that Geppetto caught. So, Pinocchio gets into the boat, and, he's like, oh, here I am. Jiminy's still outside. He gets on the lip of the whale, and he's knocking with his umbrella on the whale's teeth. And he's like, let me in, let me in. We see some birds kind of attack him, then he ends up in a little bottle that's on the water. So Geppetto hears Pinocchio, he hugs Pinocchio, and then all of a sudden Pinocchio sneezes. And Geppetto's worried he's getting sick. He's a wood puppet. How do wood puppets get sick?
Alcoholic. He's an alcoholic. He doesn't understand anything.
So Geppetto mentions building a raft to try and get out. Monstro's mouth only opens when he's letting food in. Nothing goes out. Things only come in. And Pinocchio's like, I have an idea. Let's start a fire. And you've never gone to school.
Thank you.
You have no education. You've made nothing but bad choices so far. You know nothing about fire except that you
all of a sudden you can be a problem solver and you have this grand plan.
Yes.
How do you even know what fire is? I mean, you caught your finger on fire. You didn't know what that was. Like,
yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Yeah, has no clue. So all of a sudden he's like, we're gonna make a big fire. We're gonna make Monstro sneeze. We're gonna get on that raft and we are going to leave.
Yep.
How he got this idea,
he was gone for maybe a long time, so maybe he learned something on Pleasure Island. I don't know.
Maybe. So all of a sudden, Pinocchio is lighting everything on fire. He's putting chairs into the fire, tables, lighting this whole boat on fire. And Geppetto the entire time is like, I'm not understanding what your plan is. Like, why are you burning down my boat? Like, that's never going to work. Things only come in. Idiot.
Yep.
So, all of a sudden...
And do whales sneeze? I'm going to probably say no.
Yeah. All of a sudden, we see smoke come out of his blowhole, and then out of his mouth. And then, all of a sudden, he starts rearing up to sneeze, and he sneezes twice. And the raft goes out, just like Pinocchio's plan, but then he gets mad, because... I guess some of his undigested food just left him and he's mad. Because I don't think whales can understand that there's a fire in him.
It's called heartburn.
Just give him some Maalox, some Pepto, something. This is the most dramatic scene in the movie.
Yes.
Where it's like a whale chasing this little raft that has a fish and a cat on it. And in the scene, when the raft, gets torn to pieces, we don't know where Cleo or Figaro
nowhere in sight. Mm-hmm.
We won't see them. And then all of a sudden, Pinocchio saves Geppetto because he's in the water by himself. Pinocchio really does it. He's made of wood. Wood floats.
Mm-hmm.
Easy peasy. So he saves Geppetto. And all of a sudden, they head towards this cliff, and Pinocchio looks at the cliff and is like, if I can get into this hole, we're good. How he gets that logic as well.
All of a sudden he became an overnight genius.
Yeah. So the whale kind of pushes the water, pushes them through this itty-bitty hole through this rock, and they are all of a sudden, they made it to a beach.
Yep.
Whereas Cleo and Figaro wash up on the beach. Cleo's still in her fishbowl.
A clean.
So the water effects in Pinocchio also inspired how to make the water effects from The Little Mermaid.
Really? That's interesting.
Which took a lot of strategy. So in order to make all of the moving water, they had to black out the negative, and what was exposed needed to represent the light patterns that you would see on the floor of the ocean. And then for the waves, they used blue construction paper and some shading on each individual frame. And there's also a multi-plane effect where the tone of the water would be different in the foreground than it was in the background. So it was about 6 animators that worked on the water scenes alone.
Wow.
To make just over 4 seconds of footage.
That's insane.
And all of these Monstro scenes were the reference for The Little Mermaid.
Which we saw, like, before we talked about Belle, how he kind of was, like, trying things out in that movie with the different hairstyles of the girls. So it's like he leaves things in his Disney's movies to remind us of past movies, but he also, like, tries things, like, kind of showing us what might be coming in the future, which at the time we, of course, don't know.
Right. So at this point, Pinocchio is face down in the water, and Geppetto is on the beach. Everybody's beached. We're back at the little woodchop cottage, and Geppetto is crying on the foot of his bed, and we see Pinocchio just laying there, and he's crying and praying for his little boy.
But he's made of wood.
He
was walking underwater. What?
I know this. Little wooden children have no lungs, have no nothing, have no internal organs. How you can die, I have no clue.
So this is what my intake is. Pinocchio's faking it because he's a bad boy. Geppetto, drunk off his butt.
So the blue fairy's voice comes into context. She doesn't come in, it's just her voice. And says, prove yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish, and someday you will be a real boy. Awake, Pinocchio, awake. And all of a sudden, Pinocchio is not only alive again, but he's a real boy. He's no longer made of wood. He's real. And Geppetto kind of looks up. When he hears Pinocchio, he stops crying, and then all of a sudden he's like, you are a real boy. They turn on all the music boxes yet again.
Because that's how they roll.
Yep. They celebrate, and then Jiminy goes out of the window, looks up at the sky, and thanks the blue fairy. And all of a sudden, he is rewarded with this big, shiny gold badge.
Because at the beginning, when she was like, yeah, you want to be his conscience? And he's like, yeah, do I get a badge?
Yep.
And she's like, if you can lead him in the right direction, you will.
Yep, it'll have to wait. And it finally, at the end, he gets his badge that says he's a conscience.
Number one conscience.
Yep. When You Wish Upon a Star will play again, and it kind of just backs out just how it began with the town and the bright star over the town, and then you see the end written in wood, and that will conclude the movie.
That's awesome. Let's talk about a little fan theory. So last week we talked about Snow White and the character Dopey. This week we're talking about Pinocchio and Geppetto. There's a fan theory that says Dopey is actually the same person as Geppetto. Like they're the same person, just grown up. So Dopey grew up into Geppetto.
Oh.
So the reasoning for this is it was fan fiction, of course, all of this is. They have similar features. And the theory states that there was only originally 6 dwarves, and they were just wandering around, and they found a baby and thought it was a dwarf. So they took the baby with them, and that was Dopey. And Dopey grew up with his family that was holding him back, hitting him, making him do all the hard work, things like that. But when he grew taller than the rest of the dwarves, they kicked him out.
Oh, that's sad.
And he walked all the way to Italy, where he started building up his own home. His abusive childhood also explains the strange clocks he was making, a mother smacking a child, a drunk, a hunter, and the turkey almost getting decapitated. So it's just something interesting, I thought.
It is. It's very interesting. So this film cost about $2.3 million to make, which is about twice as much as Snow White. It only earned back less than $2 million during its initial run, which Pinocchio is the first Disney movie to lose money. And they initially think this because of how dark it is.
Yeah, people either, I think, love it or they hate it.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know.
I'm not its biggest fan. I like the movie, but I
like chunks of the movie.
Yeah.
Like certain scenes, certain things like that. The Monstro scene scared me as a child. Like, I was scared of when he was chasing Pinocchio and like that darkness. And like we said, it was a very dramatic scene when that was happening. She would leave that impression.
So, because this film didn't initially amount to the same success Snow White did, it affect Disney's next project, which was Dumbo, which they did economically.
Okay.
Eventually, Pinocchio did make a profit during its re-release in 1945, which Disney put it back into theaters 7 times between 1945 and 1992.
Gotta get your money's worth.
Yeah, so I mean, it eventually made its money, but not initially. Wow. So Walt Disney was really involved into this film. This is his second feature following Snow White, and he was very hands-on. He was very involved in every single step, especially when it came to getting pitches from sketches and artists. Nothing was ever good enough for him, and he was very meticulous, and he had a big eye for detail. Pinocchio won 2 Academy Awards, and it holds the distinct honor of being the first Walt Disney film to win an Oscar for both musical categories of Best Score and Best Song for When You Wish Upon a Star. This would not be received by that studio again until 1965 with Mary Poppins.
Wow. It's surprising to me that Pinocchio didn't do so well, because I feel like Wish Upon a Star is almost like the Disney theme song overall. Like, yeah. I feel like it's well known. So the fact that the movie that it came from didn't do well is insane.
Aside from Cinderella's opening song, the When You Wish Upon a Star is, I think, the next famous Disney song.
For sure.
So this was the first animated film to feature already famous voice actors. So in Pinocchio, which if you're probably younger than 45 years old, you may or may not.
These people, but it's okay.
Dad will. So it featured Dickie Jones as Pinocchio, Cliff Edwards as Jiminy Cricket, Christian Rubb as Geppetto, Charles Joodles as Stromboli, and the carriage driver. And
I thought so! Okay, sorry.
And they were all household names in 1940 when this movie came out. Ravenscroft would land the singing and speaking roles for many other Disney animated films over the next 50 years, from Dumbo to The Brave Little Toaster. And he can still be heard at some Disneyland attractions like the Haunted Mansion, Country Bear Jamboree, Pirates of the Caribbean. Edwards went on to voice the role of Jim Crow in Dumbo, and he reprised the role of Jiminy Cricket in several other Disney cartoons over the next 20 years. Wow. According to the 1938 New York Times, Walt Disney threw out 2,300 feet of film footage, representing 5 months of work, because it missed the whole feeling that he had in it.
Oh my gosh, hit me in the stomach if I was the person that worked so hard on that.
Which we will get into that 2,300 feet of footage later. It took 12 artists 18 months to come up with the total Pinocchio look. Wow. That was rounded and cute enough to pass what Walt wanted. Animator Milk Cow finally hit the idea of drawing him up as a human boy and then adding the puppet's nails and joints. Originally, he was just a block of wood. There were 2 million drawings used for this film. Only 300,000 appeared in the final print. Wow. And there was artwork for this that was created 3 to 5 years before the film's final release. There it is. So, according to one of the managing directors, Pinocchio was in progress years before the film's 1940 release. So when you see the film, it looks like it's anything but a rush job. And the animation took hundreds of artists, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 or 800 of artists all together at the studio at that time. So there's so many people working on this film. The studio thought highly enough of the film's visual artistry that it staged exhibitions of the original artwork at the Brooklyn Museum and 2 other New York galleries to coincide with New York's premiere of the film in February of 1940. Much of the film's visual richness comes from Disney's famed multiplane camera, which was somewhat new for 1940. The first film to use this type of technology was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which they kind of used to test this multiplane camera. And then they're like, oh, well, it worked well for that film. Let's use it for this film.
Don't fix it.
Exactly. It works. So...
And it's your style. Like, they're developing a style. You know what I'm saying? Artistically, it's going to be known for Disney forever because that was his style.
So, for Pinocchio, the Disney team developed what is now called the universal crane that could approach the set from any direction, and it's similar to like a crane-mounted camera on a live-action set.
Cool.
They originally said that Geppetto knew Pinocchio's family tree story, which when I first read this, I'm like, how can Pinocchio have a family tree?
Like what tree he actually came from? Gotcha.
I'm like, that seems a little
odd.
Yeah.
Drunk.
Yeah. This is in a cutscene. In the cutscene, Geppetto was going to tell Pinocchio the story of one of his ancestors, which was a pine tree.
Of course.
Yep. It was a mighty pine that set against the storms. And then while hearing the story, audiences would see Pinocchio playing in his imagination. He can see all of this. Birds flying around this tree. All of a sudden, Geppetto's workshop. And I'm just like...
What, was it too sappy for you?
Oh my, boo. So, anyway.
You're welcome.
So, the Book of Pinocchio was written by an Italian author, Carlo Collodi, in the 1880s. And Pinocchio was originally very unlikable.
It's a totally different story. We're going to forewarn you. Totally. If they thought Disney's Pinocchio was dark and it didn't do well, this is way worse. Like, way darker.
Yeah, so Pinocchio really isn't a nice character. He's a brat. He didn't listen to anybody. And that's where the unused, thrown out footage came from, because Disney's like, let's do Pinocchio, we're going to do Pinocchio. And Pinocchio is not the character that they wanted.
Right.
So production, as they were going down that road, was like, we can't do this. We need to make Pinocchio more innocent and very endearing, and we need to allow the audience to better engage and get a root for him. So Carlo Collodi, who wrote the original novel, the novel was in installments in an Italian magazine
Meant for children
in 1881, and it was published as a book 2 years later. There are some areas that they're like, oh yeah, you'll become a real boy, but that's not the end goal. Like the movie, that's the end goal. Pinocchio wants to become a real boy.
Right. So he's not like, in the Disney version, he's more realistic as a boy.
Yes.
Even though he looks like a boy. And then ends up as a real boy with not being wood.
And he has that goal, that end goal. He wants to be a real boy.
Yeah. It's totally cool. Like, it's just flip-flop. Sorry, keep going.
So In the final two-thirds of the book were an afterthought. Pinocchio was originally published serially in the weekly,
some Italian, Giornali degli Bambini.
Yep.
Or also known as the newspaper for kids.
Yeah. And it gained a large following, but when Pinocchio was hanged after the 15th installment, the young readers were horrified. Why he thought that would be okay for young people to
get there.
He's
a character on his own.
Oh, yeah. So his publishers forced him to extend the story, bringing Pinocchio back to life through the invention of a beautiful child with blue hair, which later morphs into the Blue Fairy. Collodi also altered the genre, writing his tragedy as black comedy, and he struck a compromise. So Pinocchio's life would be spared, but in return his punishments would become ever more baroque and gruesome.
Right, so Carlo Collodi, he never had children. And in this book, if you've ever read it, or if you ever do read it, you will completely understand why he never had children. He loathed children, boys especially, which makes sense why, if we look back at Disney's Pleasure Island, there was no girls.
Yeah.
Collodi hated boys. He thought they were rodents. He didn't like them. Every boy in Pinocchio was disobedient, greedy, filthy, but Pinocchio was the worst. Collodi describes him as disgrace, a ragamuffin, and confirmed rogue. The first thing the puppet does, which he was in the book, he 100% is a horror, like he's way worse, horrible kid. First thing he does as a puppet is laugh in Geppetto's face, steals from him his wig, and then later on gets him locked up in jail for like a few years. Pinocchio is very bad behaved. He was not intended to be charming or endearing like Disney had for Pinocchio in his version. Collodi wanted him to serve as a warning. It was originally supposed to be a tragedy, which is why the puppet ends in an execution where the fox and the cat hang him from a tree. So once Disney was starting to make this, early on in the project, like you were saying, Disney became so frustrated with Collodi's story that he halted production. It was unsuitable for children, and Disney concluded that Pinocchio was too cocky, too much of a wise guy, and too puppet-like to be sympathetic.
Yeah, and that's where the tricky part was to humanize him and bring a human look to this puppet to make him look more human than just a block of wood.
Right. So they changed what they needed to. Pinocchio would then become, his wish would be granted, fulfilled from the start. He would not be depicted as a puppet after all, but as a real boy and more gentle. And the same thing in the book, there's the talking cricket. It has no name, it's just a cricket that talks. He is a minor nameless character, but that Disney turned into Jiminy Cricket. Looks like a little bald-headed man who serves as Pinocchio's conscience. And in the book version, Pinocchio was being, rebelling against his father, and the cricket yelled at him. He scolded him, telling him he was doing wrong, kind of like a conscience. And Pinocchio smashes him and kills him with a hammer.
That is so mean. That is
so dark.
So graphic. It is. And even though in the book that the insect comes back as a ghost, Walt wanted him to have more of a role, so they gave him a name. They let him live, so Pinocchio never killed him. And they named him to give him more of a human, like they humanized him.
Yeah.
And they gave him clothes, and he walks and he talks just like a person.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at Jiminy Cricket compared to a regular cricket, they don't resemble each other. Jiminy does not really resemble a cricket at all.
No, ma'am. So funny. So the moral of the film, as we've talked about, is if you are brave and truthful and you listen to your conscience, you will find salvation. But Collodi's moral is that if you behave badly and do not obey your parents, you will be bound, tortured, and killed.
So rough.
So Disney, let's focus on the positive. If you do good, you get good. Collodi, do bad, die.
Oh my goodness.
Like, so dramatic of a change and a difference. Other things happen in the story. A few is Pinocchio bites off the hand of the cat. He kills a snake by making him explode from laughter. He turns into a donkey like at Disney, but in the book he has to dress up like a girl and dance. So a lot of weird, bizarre things happening.
Yeah. And some other differences was in the book, the Blue Fairy has a team of animals working for her, including a poodle as her coachman.
What?
A group of mice are pulling the coach, similar to, Cinderella. And a snail is her messenger.
Oh, well, that is a horrible animal to put as a messenger.
Snail mail.
Yeah, but you're going to get it so slow.
Snail mail.
Oh, man.
Stromboli has a different name.
No Amazon Prime there. Next day delivery, not happening.
Nope, not at all. Stromboli has a different name. Magnifico, which means fire eater. And Pleasure Island is not Pleasure Island. Pleasure Island in the book is Toyland.
Oh.
Which I'm glad they called it Pleasure Island.
I'm glad they called it Pleasure Island too.
Toyland just makes me think of Christmas and Santa and...
Mine is, it's going to be associated in a few years to Toy Story. Like, that would have been
Al's Toy Barn.
That would have been horrible for them to use Toyland.
The sea creature that initially swallows Geppetto and later Pinocchio is not a whale, it's a giant shark.
I think that's going to be way harder to get out of.
Yeah.
And less space.
Very much. So, Paolo Lorenzini, who is Collodi's nephew, had asked the Italian Ministry of Popular Culture to sue Walt Disney for overly Americanizing this creation. So he originally said that Pinocchio's adventures are an Italian work of art and must not be destroyed to make it American.
Oh.
It's a little 21st century to me, but this happened back then.
Yep.
However, there is no evidence that any action was ever taken toward this complaint.
Thank God. It's such a dumb complaint.
Yeah.
The story has a lot of similarities, but it's so different. Like, it's 100% light versus dark. There's different characters. It's enough where it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think just overall, it's when you think of Pinocchio, his nephew probably just was like, I want you to think of Italian, not American.
Hey, the guy is Italian in there. He's swearing
It is
Italian.
true. It is true. To me, it's very Italian, but to me, it's just like with all the Disney princesses, you can kind of gather where they're from.
Yes, for sure.
Based on context clues. It doesn't have to be in your face, where Pinocchio is the same way. You can gather with the context clues.
Awesome. Well, this was fun. We have a quiz that we'll put on Facebook, so you guys can take that. We'll take it and post it as well. We thank you for listening, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and click that bell so you can get our notification when we post. For any additional content, you can find us at Patreon, Facebook, and Instagram. And don't forget, beauty is found within.